Hi everyone, and welcome to our session. I'm Barbara D'Angelo from the Technical Communication Program at Arizona State. I will be chairing the session as well as presenting. Joining me is Kim Vanna from the College of Nursing at Arizona State and Melissa Meeks from Eli Review. Our presentation today will focus on the redesign of an online required writing course for nursing students. We'll describe the initial planning for the course, our redesign of it, and how we have evaluated the redesign to uncover successes in how to move forward. The course was initially created in a collaborative process beginning in 2010 when an associate dean in the College of Nursing approached the Technical Communication Program head to work with the nursing faculty on the development of a required writing course for their new online RN-BSN degree. Over several months of meetings between both nursing faculty and the course developer for the TechCom program, as well as a librarian, we developed course goals and outcomes, as well as how the course would fit into the overall curriculum of the RN-BSN degree. Our conversations led to a mix of workplace writing and academic. Since the course would be the first taken in the degree, one goal was to help students learn to write effectively for their upcoming course. However, since most of the students would be working RNs rather than continuing in academia, workplace writing was the primary goal. We developed the course to revolve around a standardized syllabus and set of assignments with one course lead, but with several instructors teaching from a shared syllabus and assignments. In the spring of 2019, the switch to a new learning management system and requests from instructors for a refresh was the impetus for starting on a redesign. In addition, we had completed some assessment of the course in which final reflective statements had been evaluated by one TechCom faculty member and one nursing faculty member. Using that data, we were able to identify strong and weak points in student learning. For example, one strength in particular was the learning of how to write for different audiences. One weakness, though, was ongoing struggles with the style use of APA.
Several factors played a role in our decision to revise the course. Our student population shifted from registered nurses returning to school to nursing students in the community colleges who wished to take university courses concurrently to earn their Bachelor of Science degree in nursing. With this shift in students, we at the nursing college noted students' difficulty with thematic organization, their tendency to give general effective feedback to peers without suggestions to improve drafts, and reticence to revise their own work. Additionally, students spoke to the titles of articles rather than citing by author and year. Students also demonstrated a lack of agreement between nouns and verbs and between nouns and pronouns. Lastly, students did not follow the APA comma and semicolon rules. The members of the redesign team included a literacy professor from writing studies and a literacy professor from the RN-BSN concurrent enrollment program at the university. The team decided to focus on peer reviews, revisions, and beginning APA citations and references within the TWC course, and to focus on grammar errors and additional APA skills in the subsequent RN-BSN concurrent enrollment program literacy courses.
During the first 10 years of the course, we recycled through 3 scenarios in 2 different sets of genres as we learned what worked from the original design and what didn't work. The first iteration attempted to do it all by incorporating primarily workplace writing and some academic. In the second and third scenarios, we eliminated the academic style genre of nursing article and incorporated more reflection to encourage transfer of learning from one course to the next. For the redesign in 2019, we reduced the number of discussions and increased the number of other process-related tasks, including drafting and peer review. Our goal was to not only help students improve their writing, we also wanted to enhance their engagement with the course and their writing in a more meaningful way through collaboration. To help us do that, we adopted the use of Eli Review.
Eli Review is a course tool created by Writing Studies faculty at Michigan State University to promote effective peer feedback and revision. In Eli Review, instructors design survey-like peer review tasks. Different types of questions guide students in giving helpful feedback. Although the app offers a library of sample review tasks, most instructors design their own. Barbara designed the Module 3 topic selection review tasks shown on the left. The peer review begins with a checklist of criteria aligned with the writing task. The task encourages critical reading by asking students to slow down and look for specific traits or features before jumping to judgment or suggestions. After students have checked the boxes to say, "Yes, this draft meets expectations," then they are asked to rate it. The scale here is not the typical above expectations to below expectations rubric. Instead, Barbara crafted this rating to encourage students to reflect on how well they could use the topic proposal to accomplish the next step in the process. This approach reinforces that the writing and the peer review tasks support and scaffold student success. This kind of rating also encourages metacognition, and it avoids putting students in the problematic position of guessing grades. This review helps students practice thinking through the assignment as they give feedback to their partners. Even with clear criteria to guide them, students struggle with expressing constructive criticism. Barbara addressed several common issues in the instructions in this review task. First, the instructions acknowledge the pressure students feel to offer praise. Second, students are reminded of a model for composing a comment: describe, evaluate, suggest, which I'll explain more in the next slide. The model helps reviewers know how to start, expand, and end their comment. Third, students are encouraged to use the language from the checklist and ratings in their feedback, which helps them know what to talk about. Finally, students are coached in framing their comments so that the problems are in the draft, not the writer. A sample phrase like, "the first paragraph is missing," helps writers know how to put the principle in action. Review tasks are opportunities to practice principles of effective communication. Effective reviewers persuade writers to revise. The Describe, Evaluate, Suggest model mentioned in the review task offers several principles for helpful feedback. This model comes from Bill Hart Davidson, writing professor at Michigan State University and one of Eli Review's co-inventors. The model encourages reviewers to include 3 types of information in their feedback. First, description says back to the writer what the reviewer understands the draft to be saying. It's a summary or restatement that shows the writer the reviewer has read closely and is attuned to the writer's goals. Description builds trust. Evaluation names a strength or a weakness. Evaluation pinpoints the criteria at stake. And the third type of information is a suggestion, which helps writers know what to do next. Suggestions give writers ideas about how to build from a strength or how to improve a weakness. Comments that include description, evaluation, and suggestion ensure that writers get all the information they need to revise. Also, crafting a comment that notices, names, and addresses a strength or a weakness in another student's draft encourages reviewers to apply the same insight to their own work. Bill calls these benefits of giving helpful feedback giver's gain, and the empirical evidence for the effectiveness of peer learning confirms its power. When our team partners with instructors like Barbara and Kim, we help them craft peer feedback tasks that teach students how to give helpful feedback. Describe, evaluate, suggest, and the notion of giver's gain are core to that process.
And so, working with Melissa, I developed the syllabus, rubrics, Eli and Canvas shells that are cloned each term for individual instructors. Here you see the structure of the course in Eli, with the flow of assignments from draft peer review to revision planning for each course module. Melissa Another colleague and I also delivered a peer review workshop to help instructors in nursing faculty to become familiar with process pedagogy and with Eli Review as the technology we would use in the course to facilitate peer review and revision planning. As we indicated previously, we have been continuously assessing the course since its origin. We've continued to do that with the redesign using several methods as we've indicated on the slide. However, the peer review and revision data are what we'll be covering today. For the evaluation, we accessed all comments made by students for all peer reviews from fall 2019 through summer 2020. The word cloud on this slide is an illustration or visual summary of the total number of words, along with some data to show the broad overview of the data before moving into the specifics.
When we looked at 12,798 comments, we found the typical problems. For example, this short comment includes affective evaluations, praise, and generic suggestions. This comment violates several of the cautions explicitly stated in the instructions. Instructions aren't magic. This kind of comment could have been sent to most students in the class. But we hoped that more writers got comments like this one. This longer comment is much more specific and personable. This reviewer takes the time to summarize the writer's goals and then to offer thoughtful questions and suggestions. The generous reviewer is thinking alongside the writer in ways that prepare them to turn back to their own work with greater insight. As instructors and program administrators, we'd like to see more helpful, elaborated comments and fewer unhelpful short ones. But there's 12,798 comments from 377 students. How can we streamline our analysis? How can we describe reviewers' different levels of contribution in peer learning so that we have benchmarks to guide instructors in future courses? We started our analysis simply with word count. Our methodology for developing engagement groups is as blunt as our metric. We summed every word a reviewer wrote in the course. Then we ranked reviewers by word count. We included all reviewers in this ranking, even those who missed 1 or 2 reviews. Then we formed 4 equal groups, or quartiles. For clarity, we will refer to the 4 groups by a label that focuses on their contributions: struggling, skimpy, solid, or strong. And we're taking suggestions for labels. Among the 94 struggling contributors, 63 completed all 5 reviews, and they averaged about 858 words or 3.4 pages of writing as a reviewer. Most students in this group completed all their work. They just didn't say much. Among the 93 skimpy contributors, 83 completed all 5 reviews, and they averaged about 1,400 words or 5.6 pages of writing as a reviewer. Among the 94 solid contributors, 91 completed all 5 reviews, and they averaged about 1,900 words or 7.7 pages of writing as a reviewer. Among the 94 strong contributors, 92 completed all 5 reviews, and they averaged about 13,000 words or 12 pages of writing as a reviewer. These engagement groups help us see a broad engagement pattern. A struggling contributor, for example, is writing about half as much as a solid contributor and a quarter as much as a strong contributor. We'd expect these wide gaps in the quantity of feedback to also make a difference in the quality of feedback. We can better understand the quantity of reviewers' feedback by looking at patterns in their frequency and intensity of engagement. Engagement frequency is how often reviewers participated. It includes the number of reviews out of 5 and most completed 5. Frequency is also related to the number of partners they were assigned by their instructors. Struggling contributors had about 10 partners. All other contributors had 13 or more. The intensity of engagement is word count, and we've covered those patterns already. Most importantly, we can get a blunt measure of the quality of feedback reviewers gave writers by counting the number of comments that writers added to their revision plans. A revision plan in Eli Review is a prioritized list of peer feedback with notes for reflection that writers share with instructors. Writers added about 6 comments from struggling contributors, 8 from skimpy contributors, 10 from solid contributors, and 11 from strong contributors. It's clear that writers use more comments from skimpy, solid, and strong contributors and fewer from struggling contributors. These trends give us some confidence that the 4 engagement groups have observable differences. To take a look at these trends, we identified 4 representative students by selecting a student roughly in the middle of their engagement group, which is based on total word count. Then we analyzed these 4 students' contributions across the 5 reviews in the course. Students do a variety of tasks and types of writing throughout the course. Before beginning the course scenario, students are asked to reflect on their identities as nurses, how writing is used in nursing practice, and how writing contributes to nursing as a discipline or field of practice, and to their own view of themselves as nursing professionals. In Module 3, we begin the scenario in which they are to create a poster and a handout for a health fair for local school officials. They begin with a brainstorming activity to select a topic, followed by a research log, and then the poster and handout themselves. Of note is that we ask students to peer review and develop revision plans for the process tasks as well as for the 3 formal genres. We were interested in knowing how students' engagement changed across time. This table shows the 4 representative students and their word counts for each of the assigned reviews. The label underneath the word counts describes the student's engagement group for that specific review. So this skimpy contributor started off contributing solidly in the first task, dropped to skimpy in the second, dropped further to struggling by the third, rebounded to solid in the fourth, but finished up skimpy. In fact, all 4 students' levels of engagement vary across tasks. The strong contributor was most consistent, but other students contribute at a different level in each review. Students' lives, motivations, and skills are diverse. This engagement variability underscores that frequent opportunities to practice is important, especially for struggling students. These 4 individual students also help us confirm several big ideas about engagement. I'll talk through the trends by comparing each engagement group against the adjacent group. First, struggling contributors consistently missed out on opportunities to practice while giving feedback. The representative student in this category missed 2 reviews, but they also had fewer partners than other students in the 3 reviews they completed. That's likely because their drafts were too late, and the instructor had to include them in a smaller peer review group of other late writers. This reviewer's comments were long enough to be helpful, but they had about half the number of unique words as the skimpy contributor. This reviewer not only didn't say much, but also might have repeated the same ideas often. Low word count and low unique words are strong negative signals, especially compared to the rest of the reviewers. It's no surprise then that only 16% of this reviewer's comments were added by writers to their revision plans. The struggling contributor is clearly off pace with the rest of the class. This student's missed opportunities affected their peers too. Second, skimpy and solid contributors differ by word count, not completion. Both completed 5 reviews and had 16 peers. But the solid contributor wrote much longer comments and used far more unique words and had a higher percentage of comments added to writers' revision plans. It's likely that the skimpy contributor offered less high-quality feedback than the solid contributor. These trends indicate that at the low end of word count, quantity is usually quality. Third, the solid and strong contributors have large differences in comment count and word count, but their similarities in unique word forms and in comments added to revision plans indicates that the quality of their feedback was similar. At the high end of word count, quantity is not always quality. Overall, these blunt engagement metrics give us a straightforward way to describe reviewers' contributions in the 5 reviews in terms of quantity and quality. Our sense that comment length indicates helpfulness bears out. When it comes to feedback, more is better. More comments with more unique words produced more feedback that writers added to revision plans.
Word count is a consequence of substantive feedback, and we wanted to know more about the kinds of feedback these reviewers were giving to their peers. That is, the content and how we could categorize it. In addition to the engagement data then from Eli Review, Kim and I coded all of the comments from our 4 representative students using feedback model from Hattie and Timberly, which focuses on feedback for enhancing learning. In particular, we were interested in seeing how the bottom layer of this model played out in student comments in terms of task, process, self-regulation, and effective comments.
For this evaluation, we had 2 coders, one from writing studies and one from nursing. Initially, the 2 coders trained by coding all comments from 2 students who were not included in this project. The coders compared their assigned codes, discussed the discrepancy between assigned codes, and came to a final agreement on all comments. During this training, the coders agreed to add 2 codes to those of the Hattie and Timberly model. Comments were coded as FT if the feedback from the reviewer was about the task, such as meeting criteria and correcting errors. Most of the students' comments fell in this category, whereas comments were coded as FP if the reviewer's comments encouraged the writer to construct meaning by looking at relationships, cognitive processes, and transference of prior learning. The strong student was more likely to incorporate recommendations on processing. We coded feedback about self-regulation as FR. Self-regulation includes autonomy, self-control, self-direction, and self-discipline. The suggested strategy is broader than recommendations given for a product. An example would be, I recommend that you follow the rubric when ordering the content for the next draft, or be sure to schedule more time to complete your next draft. During this project, the 4 students did not give this type of feedback. FS refers to effective comments about the writer, such as, you are a great writer. These comments generally are positive in nature. Only 1 student gave an effective comment about the writer. We added the following 2 codes in this project during the coder training. Comments were coded as FW if the reviewer comment gave an effective comment about the product, such as great work. If a reviewer gave a reflective comment about themselves, such as, after looking at your draft, I realized that I need to include more references in my draft, the comment was coded as not applicable, NA, because the comment did not refer to the work being reviewed. For the 4 students in our project, we had an inter-rater reliability of 86%. We then met and reconciled all coding differences. The students were placed into the categories based on their word counts for the term. The cells show the number and percentage of comments that fell into each coding category. The skimpy and struggling students had a higher percentage of task-related comments than the strong and solid students. This relationship can be explained by the greater number of process comments made by the strong and solid students. The strong student gave more task-related comments, and the struggling student gave less task-related comments. The strong and solid students were more likely to give comments that had to do with processes. However, the struggling student showed a lower percentage and lower comment count for processes. Effective comments about the writer were uncommon. Only 1 effective comment about the writer was noted in this project. No comment spoke to self-regulation during the writing process. The struggling student gave a higher percentage of effective comments about the work. This higher percentage may have occurred due to the lower number of comments overall by this student.
In this table, we've combined the engagement data that Melissa covered with the coding results. There are a couple of points here that I'd like to highlight. As we've seen, the stronger students tend to make more process comments than task comments, and so a clear pattern emerges. The stronger the student, the more words and comments they tend to make, the more those comments are likely to be process-oriented rather than task-oriented, and the more they are likely to be used in revision planning by their peers. That would indicate that process comments are more valuable for revision planning than task comments based on the judgment of peers. Yet, as we can see, the majority of comments for all of these students are task comments. The specific instructions for the review task addressed both process and task, but only strong reviewers did both. So what does all of this tell us? In terms of developing and redesigning the course, the first point on this slide probably is not surprising. Collaboration and writing in the disciplines or across the curriculum is key, not only for creating a rigorous and credible course, but also for student success. Bringing our different perspectives together to understand what works from the context of writing studies, as well as from the discipline, provides a rich foundation on which to build. In that context, I think that the foundation and respect built during our early conversations was a factor in our high interreliability rating, despite being from different disciplines. In fact, it was fairly high before we resolved differences during our coding practice, and we had little conflict or disagreement when resolving those differences. Bringing in an educational technology expert such as Melissa as part of the collaboration is also key. Beyond the expertise in the software, Melissa brought her own expertise in teaching and learning writing, professional development, and support. In a multi-section course that uses a common set of assignments and instructors who are primarily adjuncts with teaching responsibilities only, that support is critical. In that context, process really did save us. We only had time today to share the results of the analytics from Eli and our coding of student comments. For assessment purposes, both are additional data to use in overall course assessment, along with more traditional means, grading trends, instructor feedback, course evaluations, etc. To again refer to our presentation title, Why Did Process Save Us All? In terms of assessment, analyzing analytics and coding is time-consuming. But if we look at assessment as a form of research that improves our courses and practices, an open question is whether that time is worth it. In that context, I'd say yes. The analytics and coding provide us with data we can't get from other methods. So the question really becomes, where do we find the time, or how do we minimize the impact on time so that we can do that research to inform our course design in a way that leads to effective learning for students? Why did process save us in terms of pedagogy and course design? As the course lead, I can say that instructors consistently report that they love using Eli and having the additional draft review revision cycles in the course. It saves them time by providing a structure to work with. Kim, as faculty who teaches the course in the degree program that follows the writing course, has seen improvement in coherence in student writing and in their ability to focus on content and to use comments for revision. Yay, process saved us pedagogically. Beyond that, because we did the research at a programmatic level for all sections of the course over the period of more than a year, we now have data to help us with ongoing course design and coaching of students. For example, the coaching clearly shows us that stronger students engage more and focus more on process comments, which appear to be the comments that peers find most valuable. That's not surprising. But having this data allows us to help students, especially struggling students, understand why review is important and why the types of comments that they give are important. Our analysis of the engagement data underscores the importance of explicitly teaching feedback, not merely assigning it. Struggling contributors who can learn to say more to other writers improve their chances of experiencing giver's gain. Another takeaway is that results show us that task comments predominate. That's not surprising again. Instructions in rubric lead students, especially struggling students, to focus on traits and rating skills if they are struggling with ways to comment. While those focus on task and process, as mentioned earlier, students still predominantly want to meet assignment and task goals. For me, there is the lingering tension between designing a course that uses process to help students succeed in the course, from their perspective getting a good grade, versus designing a course that uses process in a way that helps students transfer their learning beyond the one course. And that point brings us to the overall larger question of why process saved us all. We collaborate in an initiative such as Writing in the Disciplines to improve student learning. Ideally, that learning carries over from one course to the next. In a junior level course, in a degree program, is emphasizing task when learning peer review acceptable and enough? Or do we want to move towards doing more process comments and suggestions? And with that question, thank you. We'll open the floor to your questions.